All right. We've been looking at basics of Flutter last week. We started advancing from Dart programming onto Flutter. As you notice, Flutter is a collection of UI elements, whereas Dart is the programming language. We program Flutter in order to do whatever we want on the screen. So we looked at very basic things, starting off with understanding what the architecture of Flutter is, right? We looked at what Flutter is, we looked at how to install it, and we also discussed the architecture behind Flutter, right? So these are the things we discussed the other day. We looked at the anatomy of a Flutter application. So as you can see, right at the bottom, we have Dart. Then we also have some C++ things to run very fast. And also what is at the real hardware layer, the embedded, right? And then we wrote our first Flutter application, the Hello World, without no bells and whistles. It's just has the main code, and run app is where we are actually running the application. These are called widgets. So for Hello World, we are using actually we are using the text widget. But since we want to put it onto the center of the screen, we are putting the text widget inside the center widget. So that's how we got the text in the middle of the screen. Now, this is odd size because I resized the screen to take a smaller screen capture, right? Otherwise, it can take any size you want. It can be desktop, it can be a mobile application, mobile phone, anything for that matter. Now, Flutter has this concept called widgets. This is very similar to classes in our object orientation. We also went on to understand how these widgets are built inside Flutter application. So there are two kinds of widgets that we are using. One is for Android, and another one is for Apple. So Android uses something called the Material app, and Apple uses something called the Cupertino app, right? You can, in fact, you can bypass both. If you don't want any of that, you want to keep it neutral, no problem. You can do that also. And then we looked at a very basic one along with a top title here. So as you can see now, here we are using a widget now. And the first widget we are using is called scaffold. Now home is the home page of our application, and we are using a material app in this case. So scaffold has lots of different features. One is called the app bar, which is here, the blue color border on the top. Then we have a body. This is the absolute minimum. So body has whatever that you put in here. So here to the body, we used a column widget. Column has children. Now we have one child here, text, and another child called the elevated button. So technically we had two elements here, a text and a button, right? So that's how we use Flutter. And you notice we use this concept called composition everywhere. So composition is putting one class inside another class, right? So that's a concept that we learned from object-oriented principles, and we are using heavily inside Flutter. And then we also wanted to understand the rendering model. Now, what does a rendering model mean? When you give some components, what happens under the hood? That is very important to know because one, we can optimize the speed of our application when you do it right. Two, we can also make things efficient by maybe using objects and classes and things like that. So actually, this is the diagram we were looking at. So when you have a simple design where you have, let's say, a container with a row with the image and a text, we basically break it down into understand how the widgets and the elements are created, right? So this is how it is created. This is the widget, this is the element. And then if you go further down, we can actually see basically element can be the object, widget can be the class, right? And Flutter does something very smart also. They go another step beyond. the element tree to optimize the number of objects required on the screen. So this is the final tree of our objects. So we have a decorated box, we have a render flex, we have an image and a paragraph. By the way, most of these examples I'm getting from the Flutter documentation. So I'm also sharing the link with you. You can go there anytime to have a look at it and read further. So I'm actually summarizing the text so that you don't need to read the entire text over there. Then the scaffold, what we look at previously. So there is an app bar, there's a body. There is also a floating action button called fab. Then there is a bottom navigation bar as well as a drawer if you want to use it. So I have examples where it's fully loaded. So this is with a drawer icon, title, something in the middle, fab here, and also the bottom navigation. So this is a fully loaded example. We may or may not use all the example all the time, but it's there for you to have a look. Then we look at the widgets, right? And today we are going to spend some time talking about the layout. Because Flutter, like you know, is a UI engine. So we need to understand what is going on with these UI components, right? It has a comprehensive documentation showing you everything that you can do with the layouts. Now, with all that, I'm picking up two sections with 6 layout components. Now, the 6 are actually divided into 2. One is called the standard widgets, where it is available for Android and Apple, both platforms. Then out of that, there are 2 here, card and ListTile, specifically designed out of the material widget. So this is available only when you're using the material scaffold. Okay. So the top 4 are extremely important. Now we need to know how they work for us to do any layout on the screen. So the first is called the container, then the grid view, then the list view, and then the stack, right? So as you notice, we use composition all the time. So container by its own may not work. So we need to bring in other things like maybe rows, maybe columns, maybe text, images, all kinds of stuff for us to use it properly. Container is a very, very important component because, as it says, it's a container. It's like a box. And you can have all kinds of properties there. You can have background color, you can have foreground color. And since it's a box, you can put anything you want. And it also supports something called padding and margin, right? That is, padding is space inside the box. Margin is the space between other elements within the container, right? So we can change all that. So that is the container. So let's jump into the documentation to find out. Now this is the page, by the way, right? Layout. And it is a comprehensive documentation here. As you can see, all the things are explained here very well. So I'm going to run down this documentation so that I'm trying to simplify this so that we can understand what is going on. So let's start by observing this little piece, okay, on the left. So you notice you have to observe it very carefully for you to replicate the same thing. Observation is very, very important. You can see there are 3 columns. You can see these 3 columns are center aligned. And if you take one element, now that is broken down here. There is an icon, then there is text. Okay. So there are 3 columns, and if you take one column, it has rows, isn't it? It has 2 rows. Row number 1 has the icon, row number 2 has the text. If you look at the alignment of the row, you can see the text is bottom aligned, icon is the top aligned. Now that is also important. Sometimes when your icon is, let's say, height is not consistent, you might have the alignment top and the bottom may not be very straight. And that's bad visually. Meaning people see those, even a single pixel, 2 pixel changes, people can see that very well, and they'll look at it as a very unprofessionally designed UI. Now, coming back to this, how is it organized? Right? We need to understand how it is organized, because this is how you build your application. So if you go down to the detail, okay, we have a container, right, which we're going to cover today. Inside the container, I have a row. See, this whole thing is one row inside the container. And in that one row, I have three columns. Column 1, column 2, column 3. Okay. Now, if you take one column, you have an icon and then another container. Right? You have an icon and another container. Right? And that container again has text. Okay. That container also has text. So this column is repeated 1, 2, 3 for the row. Okay. So that is how the layout of this, it's seemingly very simple, but internally, because we are using objects and classes, this is how it is designed. This is how it sort of organized internally. So this we need to understand very well. Okay. So that's the container. Now, how does the layout work? So in fact, these are the elements by this. There's a text widget, there is an image widget, then there is also icon widget. So if you're using an image, now you see these are all classes, right? Starting with a capital letter T, capital text. Image with I capital, that's also a class. And in that we are passing on a, in fact, we are calling the method called asset. To that we are passing a URL, right? We can also give some space if you want to fitting instruction. In this case, we are not using images, we are only using an icon. So if you're using an icon, well, there's a class for that also. You can have icon color. You can also have an icon name. Now, last time I showed you where to get these icons. There is a fantastic icon library from Material, Google, and you just need to give the name and you get the icon you want. Okay. So once you build your component, you can start adding that to your layout. Okay. So where do you put it? You put it under body. That's where you are connecting your component into the body. So if you want to start making this, you will start by adding a container to the body first, right? And then you start building. By the way, when you start a new application, new Flutter application, you get something like this, a very basic one, a blank one here. Then you start adding things to your body widget. Sorry, not a body widget, scaffold widget, the body parameter or the body area. Yeah, you start adding things. So, okay, so these are examples. By the way, this is a Cupertino Apple example. This is a non-material example. Yeah, if you want to keep it empty, without Cupertino, without material. But generally, we use material in this case because we are building it on Android right now. So this is the beginning of our application, and then there are alignment requirements, right? Vertically and horizontally. For that, you can use rows and columns. Okay. Now look at this example again. This is a maybe we can use it as a tablet view or a computer view. Yeah. Now, like I said, you have to break this down into pieces to understand how to get this done. Now, this red box is actually one big row. Okay. So this is one food item. So one food item is one row. Now that food item is broken down into two columns. There is a column on the left, there is a column on the right. Column on the right has an image, column on the left has some more things. Right? So right column is simple, it's an image. Column left is, a bit complicated. Now that column itself, if you notice, there are rows. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 rows are there. Okay. Now you see, if you look at the object map, Now you can start drawing things, right? Now, if you take the left column further, that also can be broken down, isn't it? So there is a text, then there is another text, then there is another widget actually. Now that widget, which is a row again, has two columns, stars and text. Now stars again is another row. So things are getting complicated now. Number of stars, right? It's a one row, number of stars. The next one is, again, you can break it down now, like the one we did on the top of the screen. So we have three columns, right? Actually, it's a row having three columns. Now each column is broken down again into three pieces. So we have an icon, we have text row, we have another text row. So this is how we build this layout using Flutter. Now, generally, when it comes to mobile application development, there are a couple of people who work on the system. So one person is responsible for designing a beautiful UI. So they may use things like Figma, Photoshop, Adobe XD, stuff like that, right? And they come up with a beautiful layout. And then comes the Flutter programmer trying to figure out the object map and see, right, okay, if this is the layout, how am I going to start it? Okay, so you start drawing your object map first, like this one, right? So you break down the screen into an object map like this, or rather widget map, we can say, right? And then start building from the smallest piece, and then you group things together. For example, you can start maybe with a star if you want, a group of stars, right? And then put the text there, and then make that row one widget, right? Now, why are we using widgets? You can use this whole thing as a widget also, so that you can pass parameters. Now, in production code, that is what we do. We make this left column one big, let's say, a widget, and we pass everything as parameters. In fact, this whole row can be a widget where you can pass the image name, name of the element, name of the food, description of the food, how many stars given to that food, how many reviews were taken, and then some action buttons where we are showing how much time it takes to prepare, right? Preparation takes 25 minutes, cooking takes 1 hour, and it will feed 4 to 6 people. Now, all this information, in fact, can come from a back end, a database. That is the third person, a person who's working on the back end or giving you the information from a database. So there are three people. One is responsible for making sure the screen is beautiful, UI designer. UX engineer also, we can say that, because he will or she will take responsibility of making sure the user experience is excellent and it is easy to use. Number two is the information provider from the backend. And number three is the Flutter programmer or the Dart programmer, I would say. Right? So it's a combination of all three there. So far, we worked on the two, except the backend. We looked at the front-end design. We also looked at Flutter design. So today we are trying to understand how to come up with a complex design like this. Okay, so as a Flutter programmer, you have to break it down into a layout like this. Only then you start coding. So don't sit down to code. Take a piece of paper, pencil, start drawing this object map, and then only you get down to the design. Now that is important because if you look at your activity document, I'm going to upload this today. This is a Flutter layout activity. Okay. So I have given you on the left a typical hotel booking application screen, right? I don't want you to design the whole thing. I want to design only this piece called a card, right? We'll discuss that later. So this piece looks like this. There's a photo on the top and there is some text at the bottom. If you break down the info box, it has 3 rows, right? Row 1, row 2, row 3. And if you take this first row, that is broken down into two pieces. This is 3/4 of a width, the title, and quarter of a width is given for the price. Actually, this width doesn't matter. There are different ways of getting things done. There are components called expanded and things like that. Then the second one has three components, if you notice. They are center aligned. There is a technique called space between, which you can see today. So first is left align, second is center align, third element is right align. So you can see address is here and how far is from where you are, and then this is actually part of the price. So this is per night, it says. At the bottom we have two elements, and both of them are left aligned. So one is the rating, the stars, and then count how many ratings. Okay, so this is your activity. We are doing similar things today, so you will understand what is going on. So this is in a box pattern. This is how it looks, right? Name of the hotel, the price, address, distance from here. This is part of the top, like I said, and then we have the review component here. I've also given you all the links, including some from outside, right? This is from Flutter. I noticed these two are excellent resources when it comes to understanding layouts. And this is the requirement. You have to create the widgets. Now, if you create it as a reusable widget, okay, you can actually repeat this multiple times. So you need to use it as a reusable widget, which I will show you today. And then you need to do two things. One, copy the code and paste it here. Paste the code, right? And then paste the UI here. The final UI should be pasted here. And then lessons learned. What did you learn by doing this is also another paragraph here. Okay. So basically you are recording your journey of learning how to build a Flutter application here. You need to zip the whole thing, including this document, because you can only upload one document to our LMS. Zip the whole thing and upload it there. Okay, so that's your exercise for today. Right, so coming back to this, right, so I explained you how to build a complex design using mapping this into objects, right? So let's get down to some hands-on experience to see how they actually work. Before we get into that, remember our primary objective of getting into Flutter is to design mobile applications, right? Hybrid mobile applications. So there we have portrait and landscape orientations, straight and then wider. So in that we have axes, we have X and Y axis. Remember, these two axes differ for rows and columns, right? Now we don't call it horizontal and vertical here. If you notice, we are using main axis, cross axis, right? We don't say X and Y because X and Y can change. That is why we don't use it. So if you take a row, the main axis for a row is from left to right. And the cross axis for a row is top to bottom. But that is the opposite when it comes to the column. For a column, main axis is from top to bottom. Cross axis is from left to right. Okay. Now this will come in handy when you are using parameters. Now, for example, you have a parameter called main axis alignment and then cross axis alignment. Okay. So especially when you have multiple columns and rows, we have to pass that on. How do you want it? Do you want it starting from the top, at the bottom, in the middle, or you want to space it out? You know, there are lots of very interesting ways to get things organized. Now here's an example. Now in this example, we are taking images here. So you notice this one here. This is a row, by the way. Main axis alignment, space evenly. What does that mean? Take the spaces evenly. Okay. Here's another. Now, by the way, here we are using a row, right? Here we are using a column. So everything else is same, right? Main axis alignment, main axis alignment, main axis alignment, main axis alignment. Space evenly, right? Now you notice this is going from left to right. This is coming from top to bottom. All right. I'll get to this once we talk about containers. I will do an example container and then see how it works so that we can understand how these things get sort of organized there. Now, that's on row and column, all right? There is also sizing, meaning now there are instances where you have a, okay, do you notice there are two boxes here? There is an outside box and there is an inside box. Sometimes you have a box, but your picture may be smaller or the picture may be larger, right? So you can do, using the parameters, you can do either fit into the box or you can crop it, meaning if the image is larger than your picture, you can remove what is outside. So those are again things you can do. Now here's another example where we are using images. We use another widget called expanded. Now expanded is another very nice one. It takes up all the available space, right? We'll get to each one separately. Now in this one, we are using another one. Now here it says cross-axis alignment center for the row, right? So we want everything to be center aligned. This is why, although the first and the last is smaller, middle one is larger, they are horizontally center aligned. That is cross-axis. Why cross-axis? Because it's a row. For a row, cross-axis is this way, yeah? Going back here, right? So it's center line, right? And what are we doing with the flex here? If you've done web design, or rather if you use CSS, there is one called Flexbox, right? Flexbox is a very interesting way to align things. We can give space between, we can align from the beginning to the end, to the middle. There are different ways of aligning components on the screen in a very easy manner. So here we are saying take up two of the spaces available. Now, for example, there are 3 items. The center one is taking double the space of any of the other element. That's why the center one is larger. Okay. There is also this one, for example, if you're using the stars, for example, right? So here we are saying main axis size min. What does that mean? Take up the minimum space. So here we have, now if we're going back to the previous example where we have stars here, right? So what we need to use is the minimum space for that. So we are packing the spaces between. So if you notice, we have a icon and this icon is green color, this icon is black color. So there are total 5 icons, right? They're green, 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 black, black, right? This is like a star rating. So this one has 3 stars out of 5, right? And it's in a row. So this is how we create components, by the way, right? Now coming back to nesting rows and columns. So you put one inside another, like in here. So you have the container, you have the row, you have the row and the text, and one row has 5 icons, right? So that's the star, by the way. The text is 173 rows. So this red color box, actually the top box, is what is here, right? You see how we are building each one piece at a time. Yeah, here we go, right? So this is called stars. Yeah. So we are storing this entire section in a variable called stars. And we made it final because we don't want it to be changed later. Of course, there are other ways, like maybe we'll convert that into a widget with some parameter passing. So we can pass parameters and say what is the total number of stars and how many stars should be green. That also can be passed. So here we have used a hard-coded text. So if you notice here, in this row, as one of the children, we are using stars, which is created here, right? And then we have the text, 170 reviews, right? So that's basically this piece, 5 stars, 170 reviews. That's how you create that. So please study this, because when you look at it in the beginning, it looks like, wow, too much code. But when you go down to the detail to understand how these things are organized, you will appreciate how this code is being built slowly, one piece at a time. Okay. With that, you can create any complex one as you want. Right. So again, now we go into column, icon, text, text. So that's this piece, icon, text, text, and there are 3 columns here. So that's how you build that piece. So it's a row and then 3 columns. So the text for that is also here. Now, before we go through this, let me jump into this common layout widgets. Actually, I would like to look at the rows first. Let me go to the row here. Right. So let me try this one first with my source code here. So I have, in fact, an example written. So let me open folder. Oh boy. Um, no. No, let me let's create a new one. Close folder. So I'm going to start at the beginning. So Shift Control P, Flutter new project, empty application. I need to select a folder. So I'm inside common layout. I'm going to say yes, and let's make it a row. It's creating a project now. You have to create a project unlike what we did with Dart, because this is something that we can run on a mobile phone simulator or your real mobile phone as a desktop application, or even as a web browser application. Now, I don't want to run it as a mobile application. I would, because I'm just testing this, I would like to run this as a web browser application. So let me minimize this and click the play button. It will ask me how I want to run. Now, in my laptop, I have configured a mobile simulator, Pixel 3a. I also have an Edge browser and a Windows desktop. So I'm going to use the Edge browser because that's easy for me to run. Let it come up on the screen. I'm running on the debug mode, by the way. It will start a launching screen actually. Now, this is a very basic app. It's called the Hello World app. Nothing fancy. I have a home. I have a scaffold. I have a body. If you remember, I can actually have the title tag there. Oh, okay, I'm getting my screen. I don't want to sync this. Let me reduce the width and then put it somewhere here so that oh, right, I can close this tab. So here I have my screen. So let me reduce the width. Okay, all good, right? So that's my Hello World application running inside a web browser. So first, since I'm testing my rows, I would like to bring in the, if you go back to the scaffold, right? I'm going to go to the top of this scaffold. Yeah, I want the top. I want the app bar, right? So all I need to do is bring in the app bar. So the code that is required is here. So that goes on top of the body. Let me do the alignment. Okay, there's a red color thing. It says, let me open this side here. There's some error. It says the constructor being called isn't a const constructor. Try removing const from the constructor. All right. So there is a const word here, constructor. A constant, sorry, constant. So I need to remove that because things are changing inside. And when I say yes, and I save that rather, you can see immediately my title bar coming up on the screen. It says my app, right? So since we are testing rows, row example, okay, I would like to have that also in fact has a comment for my code. There we go. So now it's changing. So this is why I'm using a browser, because I can immediately see instantly the changes. Once I'm ready with my changes, then I can run it on a simulator or my mobile phone, physical mobile phone with my cable, USB cable. So until then, you can use your browser. Now, there's also a blue color line, by the way. So don't worry about that. That's not an error. It's a suggestion for you. It says use constant with the constructor to improve performance. Improve performance, you see. So you can either put a constant here like this, right? So that way the line is gone. This basically improve the performance. Now be careful with that, because sometimes when you start adding other things, you might not get that there. Okay. So now why we started this was we wanted to try this with a row, isn't it? So I'm going to remove this constructor, the entire the body here. So that's my body. Now to this, I'm going to have a row. Okay. By the way, I need a comma at the end. So the row, by the way, if you bring your mouse there, it will show you all the available stuff, right? Main axis alignment, then cross axis, main axis size, text direction, all these things are there. So, and also children, by the way. So I will need the main axis alignment. So let's get that. Main, there, while I start typing, I get it here. So again, main axis alignment dot. Let's try with start. I'll show you what is going on here. Oops. And I need some children. Okay, now children is an array. So now I'm sure you will recall Dart here. This is all Dart programming. Yeah. For children, I will require, just to start, I'll have some text widgets. Okay. Now, text widget is a very simple one where you have some text. So let's call it A. Okay. So let's save this and see what is going on. I have an A there. Okay. Now, since it's an array of things, let's have another one. Text B. Another one also. Text C. There we go. We have ABC. Right? Now, we have no idea how this is going to be aligned. So let me go back to start and see what else I have. So there is also end. There, it goes to the end of that row. Remember, this is a row, okay? What about center? There it is. Okay, so these are very simple ones, right? Start, center, end. There were others also. What about the others? There is something called space around. Let's try that. There, space around. So there is space between the element, but they're nicely spaced out. So let's try something else. Oops. So you don't need to remember. You can you're popped out with the examples. You can just take it. So space between. Now we looked at space around. I'm going to take the next one. Space between. What does that mean? Space between also interesting because it pushed the left and the right to the edge of the screen and one to the center. There's one more. Space evenly. Right? What does that mean? Even space. Okay. So depending on what you want, you decide the parameter here. Now let me go back to the start again and I do one more change. Rather than a row, let's try a column. There we go. Right? So if it is a column, main axis, I didn't change anything, right? I made the main axis column to start and I only changed the widget to column from row. Now, similarly, if I use end, what do you think will happen? It will come to the bottom of the screen here. And if I do a center, there, it's in the center of the screen, in the middle. What about the others? Space around? Yes, they're all working, but this time as a column, isn't it? Space between. There we go. Right? Okay, I have another question now. How can I make this ABC column to the middle of the screen so that it comes in the middle of the screen? Right? How do we do that? Let's try cross-axis alignment, right? So let's try center here. Oops, no. Start, let's start at the start. No. So for a column, cross-axis is from, main axis is from top to bottom, cross-axis is from left to right. So in fact, it's not working right now because my column, I have not given any width as such, right? Let's see whether I can give width also. Oh, by the way, if you don't remember any of this, you can always do a click here and then figure out what you need. Now, for example, main axis size for a column is from top to bottom, as you know, right? So we can try that. Main axis size. Okay, so I'm going to give a size, let's say value. Max. No, it's not working. Now, remember, according to the composition, there's another way to do that, right? There is also composition. So if you put this inside a center widget, what do you think will happen? Which means there is a widget called center, right? And I need to close that here. Oh, inside the column, of course, I need a child, right? It's not there. Child column. Okay, right. Let me see. There we go. Now what did I do? I got the column with the minimum row height. Actually, sorry, minimum column width, and then put that inside a center widget. So don't worry about this blue color line. If you want to get rid of it, just put the constant in front of the widget, then it will go away. Now, for example, if I say const, it's gone, right? But you don't need to. You can keep it as it is also. So that's how I create the center. Oh, by the way, I can change this to row back. Now what happened? It's in the middle here, right? For the row. Yeah, because I've used a space between. It's taking space here. Now, you also notice there's one called min. Or was it? Not min. No, yeah, not min. Sorry. Space between. Okay, so this is row and column working together. I'm using children here. Now, generally, we break it down into separate rows on its own so that it's easy to read. Oops, it goes back. Okay. No, I can't align. The auto alignment is putting into one line. Anyways, so I guess you understand what is going on here, right? Rows and columns. Let's go back to our documentation, which is here. Right. So this is main exercise min. That's how we pack the stars, right? So if you want to build the stars, so this is what you do. The size, for example, make it minimum, and then we can, with that, we can pack the stars. Anyways, let's go to the common layout now. So since you understand the rows and column, now let's try to understand the major layout widgets. So first example would be container. Okay. Now let me open it in another tab because it gives a lot of information. So this is the container. Okay. So like I said, if you know the box model of CSS, this is exactly how it works. This is the content, whatever content. It can be an image, it can be text, whatever it is. You can have a border around that content. The space between the content and the border is known as the padding space. The space between content is known as margin. Right, so let's play with this and see how it works. Now, in this example, they're using photos. Now, since I don't have any pictures here, let me try with something else. Okay, so I go back to my code here. I wrote a sample. Let me open that container. Select folder. Okay, here's my preview screen. Oh, I have to open another preview screen. Right. So, okay, anyway, let's start this program and then see what happens. So while we wait, I'll also explain you what is going on now. So yeah, oh, okay. Ooh, I have to open this in a separate window. Let me put it to the right-hand side. Now let me explain what is going on here. Oh, I also need to put in text. Let's see, container example. All right, there we go. Right. So the container is attached to the body. I also put it inside the center, by the way. You know why it is? Because I want that in the center of the screen. Now, look at the parameters here, right? Lots of parameters. Okay. So I have a width, I have a height. So the width is 200, height is 100. And there, I also have a decoration and a child. Inside the container, I can have a child also. Now, in this case, I have one child. So if you start looking at the decoration has colors. That is the fill color. And it also has a border. So border again, I can have sides also. I can have left and right and, you know, all the sides if I want to. Or if I say all, I'm getting for all the sides. And for the border again, I have a color. I'm using black, as you notice, and then a width of 2. Okay. So that's for the decoration. That is inside and outside colors. Then I have a child here. What does that mean? So the child has, in this case, another center because I want to center the text again within the box. So if you remove the center here, the text will not be centered inside the box. Box will be centered, text will not be centered within the box. That's why I put that also inside the text. And here I have a child, right? Container with border, right? So if I want to change the color, say for example, red, I have a red box. If I want to increase the border width, say 4, there we have, right? So if I want to change the text color, that I do here. Right? So I go back to yellow, right? So this is a container. Container is an excellent gadget or a widget rather, which we can use to do all kinds of stuff. We use it all the time to align and put things together because container gives us a couple of things. One is the padding and margin space, right? So that way we can have multiple sort of containers and spaces. Now, let me, now since the center has only one child, if I use a row, right, I could use multiple containers there and see how they work, right? So for example, let's start let me copy this code and paste it in a temporary space and then try to create a new project. Flutter new, empty application. Let's call it container rows. Columns or rows, either way, right? So I am going to first paste the container and then over that, or maybe I'll start with a row. And inside the row, I will have children. To that, I will paste a container. Right, I need my header. So I'm going to copy that and put it here as the bar. So I remove this one here. By the red color. Wrong place. Oh, sorry. So that's my project. So here I'm going to have a row. Actually, let's try, we'll keep it here. Let's try a row. Children. Text. Let me see whether this is okay. Oh, where is my play button? Okay. I need to start my project again, so I had to close this guy. It's a good practice to have a project documentation here. So actually, I should have used the either this or since it's Flutter, I should use triple, right? But I'm going to just keep it simple here. All right, this is coming. So first I'm testing my row. Okay, right, the row is there. Now this children, I'm going to now replace with my container, which I wrote previously. I saved it here in my notepad. So I need to first find out where the closing bracket is. Now you notice here, you can see the red color here, right? Red color start, red color end. So I'm going to go to the red color ending and copy the container there, come to this, and instead of my text, I'm going to do it here. So in fact, I can have two containers. So it's my preview. There you go. Okay, I'm using row, by the way. I can use columns also, no problem. Right. Now, remember the alignment, main axis alignment. Oops. Let's say space between. There we go. Right. So it works. Right. I can. Okay, I'm going to remove this for a minute because let's try something else here with a container. Margin. Right. Let's say inside here, let's give about 50. You see, this is the space between the element, right? In fact, when I say all, I'm giving all four sides. So if I make it 10, it'll be close enough. There. I remove the axis alignment, right? And I'm giving this space now. This again is a very common practice when it comes to putting objects on screen. Now, since I have two containers, actually I could convert the container into a widget and then bring it here if I want to. I could do that also. I'm not going to do that now. I'm going to keep it simple. So let's make it light blue. Yeah. I have two boxes. Container 1, container 2. There we go. Now, I can also adjust a padding, by the way, padding space inside that. Now, this margin, by the way, applied to my box 1. Now, let's try padding. Let's make it 50 and see what happens. Oh, that's too much. There we go. Now you can see it's happening, right? I think 30 is what I can see. By the way, I could also increase the size here. Now, padding, you notice, is something to do with inside the box, right? So let's have a comment. Space between text and border. So that's the padding. This is space between containers, right? So this is the outside space. This is the inside space. So you notice I'm increasing the space inside here, and I wanted to keep the width and height same for both. Then only we can compare it. Yeah. So that's the container, right? Now in the previous example, I use a single container. Here I'm using a container inside a column. Of course, I can put it inside a row as well, right? So this is how you build things. And like I said, I could make a container as a widget and then bring it here as my children also, right? I could do that. You will see that example in the future parts. So now let's go back to our documentation. Okay, so container is the first one we looked at. So I have a code, by the way. I will share this document with you. So here's a container, which we tried with a simple one. So here's the output. So please experiment now, like I did now, add that into a row or a column and see what is going on. Can you repeat it? Can you change colors? Later, you will also notice you can create a repeatable or reusable widget out of this. Next one is called grid. Now, grid is interesting. Grid has two ways of using. Grid view count, grid view extent. We'll try with the extent first. Grids are again a very common thing when it comes to web design. In fact, in web design, we have a concept called responsive web design. What does that mean? Responsive means it is adjusting to any device. Although we say any device, it's actually any width of the device. So you may be using a mobile phone with a portrait mode or the landscape mode. Portrait mode, you have a shorter width. Landscape mode, you have a wider width. If you look at laptops, you have all kinds of different screens, right? You have 1024 to Apple Retina, which is 2000 something, 2048 width, right? So how do you make sure your screen is properly showing to anybody using any device? In web design, we use something called the web grid. Okay. Same concept is applicable here on the mobile as well. We can use a grid here as well. So there are two ways of using: extend and count. Now, extend is basically giving a size to the size of the grid column. Like for example, I'm giving 100 pixel. Actually, I'll be careful with the word pixel because there's a different way of calculating the pixels on a mobile phone. We'll discuss that later. So here I'm taking 100 pixels, and this is the size of the column, by the way, a grid column. And then to that, I start adding different things here. Now, in this example, okay, let me open that in my VS Code. Grid. I may need to run this on a different window. So here we go. Okay, while we wait for it, let me explain what is going on here. This is an example where I'm using a custom widget, right? So custom widget called build grid. So this is a custom widget I'm building, and I'm using that inside the body. Okay. So in the custom widget, I'm using another gadget called list generate. You know what a list is, right? So list is like an array in other programming languages. Now Flutter, or actually Dart, has a beautiful concept where it can generate similar component, because on a mobile we deal with component all the time. So this little neat feature, generate, allows us to generate same thing multiple times. So I can pass a variable. For example, here I'm passing number 10, and I'm getting 10 boxes, as you can see. 5 here, 5 here. Now, what happens when I increase the size? You see, it's dynamic, isn't it? Right? What about going further down? So, in fact, in web design, actually web development, there is one called inspect mode, where you can simulate a mobile phone, right? And here I can change it further. Now, see, for smallest mobile app, it will be single column. Then it can be 2 column, 3 column, 4 column, right? 5 column, and then it can go on and on. If you have a large screen, you can even have one single column like this, right? Depending on the size. Now, so by the way, now this is a laptop screen with a 1440 bit. So I see one big row with all the columns in one. So if you simulate it on an Apple iPhone SE, this is what you see. And if you check it on a Samsung Galaxy S8, you get this. Or if you look at Galaxy Fold, you get this. And you can also switch between the orientation, right? So different things you can do. Close this guy and put it back here. Okay. So what are the other things? Okay. First of all, max cross-axis extent is 100. This is the width of each grid cell. That's 100 pixels. Now, I told you, I had to be careful with the word pixel. Now, you see, when I go with the simulator, it doesn't look like 100 pixel, right? So we'll discuss that later. But we are saying a minimum of 100. Now, if I change it to 200, see what happens. There, now it's larger. 300, further up. Yeah. But just to understand that what is going on, let me increase this thing here and go back to inspect view. Okay. Now, remember my width of the grid is 300. Okay. Now, look at the screen size here, 280. Here, 375. So, it's taking 2 columns now. Although I gave the width of each grid cell as 300. So, if I go further down, more width, I get more columns coming up. Right? So I go back to 100 and keep it there. And also the padding space, padding inside the grid, which is between the border and the text here, is 4. And if I increase that to, let's say, 8, see what happens to the text inside the box. Okay, not much. Let me increase it further. Oh, it is increasing the size of the width also. Let me keep it at 4. It is increasing the size of the box to accompany the or to support the padding space. And main axis spacing and the cross axis. Now see, it depends on rows and columns. I'm giving 4 pixels between the boxes here. Now this white color space, that is. Okay. And since I'm using something called GridView extend, there are children. I'm not giving one child, I'm calling another widget with the parameter of 10. Now the next widget, which is called the build grid, by the way, why do you think I have an underscore here? Underscore here and underscore here. If you go back to the date class, Dart class, sorry. In the Dart class, Dart classes, we have something called private method and public method. Dart doesn't have protected method. So if you put a underscore in front, it means it's a private method. Now, since this build grid and build grid tile list is not used outside the classes, I'm inside one class here. I can keep it as a private method. Okay, so I'm passing number 10. And what am I doing with number 10? I use list generate, to which I'm passing a counter. Right, so I'm getting the counter from, by the way, this is fully loaded Dart. Yeah, I'm using the arrow function here, by the way, if you remember. Into the arrow function, I'm passing on the counter, which is coming from here, number 10. And inside the container, there you are, container, I am getting that I into the container, the variable. So that I is used here with my container text. So what do I have inside the container? I have a decoration. I have a child. That's all. I have only one child in the container. One child is center. In that center child, I have a text with the word container and the number. So 0, 1, 2, 3, they're all coming from here. All right. So this is a grid. Actually, this is grid extend. Right. So in grid extend, remember, we give the size of the grid. There's another one called grid count. What does grid count do? So grid count, as it says, gives a number. So you can give a number of elements you need. Now, let's go back here. So I'm using something called a color grid widget, which I created. So here I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? 6 colors here. And I don't say 6 boxes. I just take the length from, where is the length? Here, color length. Remember this one from Dart? So colors is a list, just like an array. And when I say array dot length, I can get the length of that. Let's try this one also. I have to close this guy. So while we wait, let me also tell you what is going on now. So here, the number is 6. So again, I'm using, under the children, I'm using a list generate, to which I'm passing number 6. And then I'm passing, or rather, I'm passing that into a container object. The container has a color, and the color I'm picking up from the array here, or the list here. And I have one child in that container. and that is going to be text, right? So text, oh, okay. Let me put it. Right. So the text color is white, whereas the background of the box is coming from the colors here. You see, I have 6 boxes. Now, the beauty is this. You see, it's resizing. Let me go to the inspect window and simulator, right? Let's do a small one. See, I can resize this now. That's the beauty of the grid. Now, see, it's scrollable, right? It's scrollable. Now, let me come back to this. And what happens when I add another color? Colors. Let's say deep purple, right? I'm going to press save and see what happens. That is the only change I'm doing on my screen. There I have my deep purple. See, automatically a box is added. Now, what if I change this? Right? It's 2 columns and 6 boxes. Right? So here I said cross axis 2. That means number of columns in the grid. Now, if I say 3, now what happens? I get 3 boxes. If I say 4, I get 4 boxes. Right? Fully scrollable. Right? So that's the beauty of using grid view. I have 2 views, extend and count. Extend will allow you to give a size of the grid. Count will give you number of columns you need. Now we are using both in different examples. Okay. Count is very useful when you're using Flutter for web design, because generally on a web we use 12 column layout, and then we try to put things in this 12 column grid layout. Whereas in mobile, we might have either single column or multi-column, depending on the view we are using. If you are also supporting tablets, we might have maybe 4 column, 12 column, single column, things like that. Right? So that's the grid view. So we are still on the simple concepts of layout. So that's the grid count. Here's the example for that. Next one is another very, very common one called the list view. Very common because we use it all the time, like in here, right? List view. By the way, all these examples are available here, right? This is the grid view. I am changing it to text because these guys are using a lot of pictures here. So I'm simplifying the example. So if you want more details, it's here. And also, by the way, this entire source code is available here. Please observe the source code. So there is a grid and list, a grid list demo. This is an interesting one. So it uses a picture here and some text on top of that picture with a semi-transparent box. Interesting concept. So entire source code is available. You can have a look at it yourself. And here's the list view. I'm using this example, and there's another source code for you to have a look called the colors demo, right? So let's switch back to this. Let's open the list. Close this. Let me play this. So while we wait, let's see what is going on. Now, just like before, I have my body here, and I'm calling a private method called the build list. right? Actually, private widget. So what am I doing here? In the build list, I have a ListView, right? What is that? Basically an array, isn't it? So in that array, I have a title, a tile, sorry. I have something called a tile. In that, I have three pieces, a text and an icon. Okay, remember carefully, text and an icon. Let me put that to the side. Right, now look at the beauty here. I can actually scroll this, right? Just like a mobile phone. If you notice carefully, there is the top set with the cinema icon. Then there is a divider here. Then there is another set with the kitchen items, like restaurants. So this is basically a list with theaters and restaurants. And we are dividing both with a divider here. And they are fully scrollable. So remember I said three people involved here. So the person who's responsible for the backend API will give us this list to us. So we take that list from the database and display it here. So since we don't have a database access, we have a hard-coded list of information. So I said there are three pieces, and this is the divider, by the way. Okay. It doesn't have any other thing, just a divider. So I'm using this build list here, right? So what am I doing here? I'm passing to this method, right? These three parameters. Now these three parameters are mapped to, this is called typecasting. Remember we did this in Dart. Three parameters. The first one is a string. Second one is also a string, but a third one is a icon. Icon data, we call it. Right? So then what are we doing in the list tile? Now list tile is a very interesting one. It has three pieces: title, subtitle, and a leading. Leading means what is on the left hand side. Leader, this is called. Right? So here are the things. So you have leading, title, subtitle, trailing. Then is three line. Now sometimes you can also actually have other now here we have additional information, right? So I have not given that information, so it's taking the default. Then dense means whether now we have some space here. Dense will make it tighter, right? So of course you can change all sorts of things here, right? So like I said, this is a very, very useful gadget here and very easy to use. And you see, we are going from a simple element to some complex element where we will be using this in a very production-oriented manner. So this is how you will be using in your actual application. You will receive the data from a database, and then you transform that into a tile list, right? And then you connect that into your scaffold and then the body there. So like I said, I kept the information or the sample simpler. You can always go back to your Flutter page to get a similar thing there. Next one, we have two more. Next one is stack. Stack is, putting one on top of something else, one on top of other. Now here, you can see there's a picture, and then on top of the picture, we have this text here, maybe the name of the person. In this example, we have a background image, then we have a icon here. Let's look at this example. I have a simplified example again. So let's go to File. Oh, by the way, before getting to that, let me also explain another example I tried. Now, in this one, I wanted to have two columns. There are different ways of doing two columns. There is a leader trailer also can be done, but I wanted to try by breaking the row into two columns and see what happens there. So here, okay, let me play this and show you what's going on. So in this one, what I did was I took the, I'm still using the list view, but here I am using row, okay? And I put that inside the padding to give some space around so that I have space around it. So in the row, I have two children. One is a text, which is a default left align, and another one on the right with the right align. So there I have text on the right hand side. There are different ways of doing this. This might look complicated, but I wanted to try it out so that sometimes you may want to divide your list into two pieces, one on the left, one on the right. Maybe you want to load an icon on the right with some text maybe, right? So there are complex design you might want to do. So this example explores that. What's going on? Okay, so here, as you can see, I have one on the left, one on the right. Okay, so right hand column, this is just the text I put it here. So you can have an icon, maybe additional text, because when it comes to backend programming, you have something called CRUD actions: create, update, create, read, update, delete. So generally we put those icons to the right hand side. Okay, so maybe you will need a design like this in order to get something done. On the left, you might have the main information. On the right, you might have those icons there. So you click it and then go change those icons there, right? So now let's jump into Stack and see how that works. Let me run this and I'll show you what is happening there. So the stack, like I said, brings things on top of each other. So here's the stack widget, and it has a children array. So I have one container and another container and another element. So I have three widgets inside the stack. So by the way, if you notice, I'm also using multiple gadgets, right? So I didn't discuss positioned widget, but of course you can go to documentation and find out what it is. So the position is to basically position things on the screen. So I'm using that to position a text inside my stack. So let's find out what is going on. So here I have my yellow box, right? On top of the yellow box, I have my red box. On top of my red box, I have my text. So whatever at the bottom comes to the top, right? So if I take this container, I know it won't do. I can show you. Oh, by the way, now this whole thing is align center because I put a alignment as well here, right? So what else can I do? Alignment, bottom center, bottom left, bottom right, all that is there. So if I say top center, alignment is on the top center. If I say center left. That will be to the left center, right? So I just put center there because everything is centered to each other. So stack is basically stacking things up one after the other. So if you keep putting things to your children, the first child will be at the bottom, last child will be at the top. So that is the stacking. You may need this. For example, you might have a picture, and on top of the picture, you want to have some text. Or maybe you want to have a semi-transparent box, and then on top of that, you may want to have a text. So in that case, you'll be using stack widget. Stack is there's a list. Stack is here, right? Our last one today is card. Now, what does card do? Card gives us a beautiful weave like this. Like actually, here I have two cards, right? Let's go back to this. Let's try that card. Now, card is another very a famous gadget or a widget including web design, mobile design as well, because you can use a card to organize lots of different things. Let's go back to the example here. So they have some nice example. Now here's one card on the left. Here's another card on the right. So here we have a beautiful picture. Now see, on top of the picture have the text. So you know how to do that, right? Stacking. And here we have another. If you remember, we use tiles, right? ListTile. This can be a ListTile, by the way. ListTile has icons and titles and text and things like that. So rather than building things on our own, what we do here is we bring in the widgets already available and connect them together to make beautiful designs. Now let me take you back to our examples here, rather exercise here. So here, this one can be a card, right? A reusable card. That's why we can see one here and another one here. So where is my launching? Okay. So the card again has a child. One card has one child. Okay, let me go back here. I have a body, and to this I have a column, because column can have multiple children. Now to that I am passing on two cards. So this is my card widget. I'm passing two cards. And this is my card widget because I can repeat it. Remember in earlier today I said you can repeat your elements. So this is how you do that. So my card widget basically takes up child, a column here, and the column has children, and the children has a list style, and the list style has title, subtitle, leading icon, that is, and then we have a divider, and under that we have some padding space. With that we have some text. Okay, there we go. Let me reduce the width. Okay, that's a beautiful card. So if you need another card, all you need to do is duplicate this. Another card, another card. There we go. Oh, this is interesting. What is this now? I don't have a scrollable gadget here. That's why I see this yellow color one. So what should I do now? Actually, I should have my list widget, isn't it? And then to the list, I should have added my cards. Right now, I am only having a column. So that's why it says there is a problem here, the yellow color ones. It says bottom overflowed by 258 pixels. Because right now, I have problem with my space. So if I remove one, I don't think one will do. Yeah, I have to only have 3 cards. I can only have 3 cards. That is because I didn't allow it to scroll up and down. Now, this is another very common widget we will be using in mobile design to pack information, like say that example I was showing you in the morning, where you may be adding pictures and other elements to it. So this is a very common feature as well. Right. So what did we cover today? I'll get this whole code to you through the website. So we covered the layout screen here, and I actually went through the common layout widgets. So there is all these things I discussed today, right? ListTile is another one which we use within our other previous applications. Okay. Oh, by the way, there are other videos also as well here. There are other resources. So please go through this. Remember, again, I'm saying Flutter is a UI engine, whereas the programming is done using Dart. And the reason why we use or learn Dart previously is to get familiarized with our object-oriented principles, to understand some of the concepts like basic concepts where we looked at objects, we looked at classes, we looked at composition, we looked at multiple objects, we looked at collections like list and whatnot. So all those are important to understand how the Flutter system is designed. So my advice to you is, whenever you are given a challenge, start drawing the component structure like this, right? Break it down into a something like this, and then you can start putting things in order. That's the best way to do it. So this page has a very nice examples of how to do things. Okay? So this one is a very good example, how to break things down into small components and get it done. All right, so go through this page. I have simplified it using my document here, which I will allow you to use. So the document will be version 2 now. What is there is version 1. So I will change the version number on the LMS later. Right. Oh, before I go, one small thing I wanted to show you. I noticed under the final year project, many people are looking at a recommendation engine for all kinds of stuff. For or actually classification. Now, this is coming under AI, and if you're not doing AI subjects, many people in fact told me can't do AI because it's complicated. Not necessarily. If you are looking at classification or recommendation, there are very simple ways of doing it. So I started writing an article here. It's not complete, by the way. You're welcome to go there, find out what is happening. So it's called In Search of a Simple Recommendation Engine. I'm trying to compare two concepts. One is using SQL, right? Other one is using something called the graph database. So there are some interesting stuff you can have a look. To begin my example, I am trying to see a game recommendation. So there are games, then there are players. And in this example, I have 5 players. And these are called game categories, not individual games, but game categories. These are also known as the game genres. I have a list of all the game genres here. I took only 5 as an example. And then which game come under which genre or the category. So for example, first-person shooter, game 1 is coming under the first-person shooter as well as RPG, right? If you take game 3, that is a first-person shooter as well as sports. So likewise. So now let's say I am the player 1 and I like first-person shooter, puzzle and sports. Now there may be games that I play under this category, but I may not be playing, let's say, I may be playing game 1, but I may not be playing game 3 because that is also coming under first-person shooter. So using the algorithm here, a very simple algorithm, the system can recommend me game 3 also, in case if I have not used the game, right? So these are the questions we'll be asking from here. Which game categories liked by which users? Which game categories are like least? I have some example answers also. So this is the SQL relational database structure. And then I'm yet to do the graph database. I have a GitHub repo here. Again, I'm still building it up. But I have an excellent set of resources for you to read. So if you are doing recommendation engine as part of your final year project, so this is a piece of your puzzle, right? This is not the main thing. You're not building a recommendation engine. You are using the recommendation engine to build, maybe to solve a problem, maybe to recommend games, maybe to classify animal sicknesses, maybe to classify what subjects are required or recommended for students. So very simple system can be built around the concept here. So have a look at that. All right, that's all for today. Any questions?